Hello, and welcome to our Coffee and Hustle podcast today. And my guest is Troy from Our Town Podcast. I have the
Hmm.
privilege to have him on my show today and get to know the man behind the podcast and how he does what he does. And so, Troy, give us a little bit of background on who you are and the people that may not know you. So, tell people what you do for our community.
For the community, sure. I moved to North Alabama about 18 months ago. I work for a company called Mantech. I have so much swag and merch from them. I used to run a big program up in Virginia, and I have a lot of stuff. So I pretty much wear a Mantech polo every day. And then shortly after I arrived here, I'm in a market development, business development role with Mantech. So I knew one person when I moved to North Alabama, a friend of mine from 20 years or so ago, and I decided to utilize some experience I had on the video production side, somewhat with what we call podcasting now. The live stream world is essentially where I came from, and I still had a lot of the equipment, and so I thought, it would be cool if I could just start a podcast because it's the barriers to entry are so low for that now, and the cost is not really on the creator like it used to be. It used to be very cost prohibitive to be a creator. So knowing that and just kind of having the equipment and knowing the barriers to entry were low, I decided to start the Our Town podcast as a way for me to meet the community and to little by little just get a little bit more education and knowledge on North Alabama. We're excited to be here. I think I've gone through my midlife crisis, so I'm in my late 40s now, and just ready to like open up that next big chapter of the book or chapters of the book that's left in my life. Um, and it's been a lot of fun. I've been purposely being very broad, and because like I said, my role it's pretty broad. But I don't necessarily focus on the cut like what I do professionally. I really do focus more on small business and or nonprofits. And what are people doing out there that they're passionate about in the community, and what makes North Alabama great? And I think in the 80 something episodes I've done, it's a long form podcast. So we'll have, very lengthy interviews. Um, I just get so much joy in hearing people's stories and the amount of hours that they put into serving this community. And it's helped me then to be more involved. I am getting more involved now as I've been able to kind of learn about various organizations, and some of them are more near and dear to my heart than others. But I'm just amazed, Carla, at the great people that live here and those who truly give back on a regular basis.
I mean, we talk about the community and the effort that we put in and the people that are in it. And I think it's just really giving people an opportunity to express who they are, and you give them that outlet to do that. And I think that's such a wonderful thing. I mean, I think that when I started my podcast, it was during COVID, and it was actually during the time when, I wanted to make my clients feel comfortable. And
Hmm.
at the time I didn't know how to do a podcast. I didn't know how to run the streaming. I didn't know how to do the extracting of the audio out. I had to dig in to figure it all out. And I think that because of my technical background and learning how to do that on my own was a blessing, because I was able to get those stories out of my clients and make them feel comfortable during that time when
Yeah.
everybody was really stressed out. And then it just turned into something else. And so for me, I'm not producing as many podcastings as you are. You're just like one number after another number and after another number. It's just incredible the amount of time that you put into it. And actually, I'm very, interested in how do you go about balancing that, because you have a very big family, you're a very dedicated father. How do you balance the podcasting time, family time? How are you managing all that, Troy?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, it's a little easier because when you have older kids, if I
Oh yeah.
had much younger kids, I probably wouldn't be able to put the amount of time I am putting into this. But having said that, when any hobby I've had, or anything where I want to put a lot of time and attention to, well, that means I have to remove other time
Yeah.
fillers in my life, right? And distractions. So, my sister and my brother-in-law were just visiting, and I just had them come up and sit in my studio. And my brother-in-law asked me, "Well, how do you find time for this?" I'm like, well, this is pretty much all I do. I mean, it has replaced other hobbies. And so when I look at, I have my normal job, I have this podcast, and then I kind of have my family and some other things I do. And so therefore, I figure out when I can do that, whether that's waking up early, going to bed late, or just, you figure out those windows of time in a day when your kids are at school, or my wife might be doing something she wants to do. I try really hard not to affect, family time and those types of things. But literally, I don't watch TV, I don't watch Netflix. I pretty much, if I'm running, I'm doing research. I'm either listening to a podcast of a guest that's about to come on, or I'm doing something to learn about Crime Stoppers or the zoo, like whatever topics have been on the show, or I'm
Yeah.
listening to my own stuff because now I'm doing a lot of YouTube shorts and things like that where I have to go back in through the content. So, I don't do and that's okay. I'm at that point in my life. I've been there, done that with a lot of leisurely things, but
Yeah.
I'm just really, really enjoying it. So whatever spare time I have, I lean hard into this.
It's so hard. I think people don't realize the difficulties of, when, you're involved in something and then it just kind of just so slowly just starts taking over,
Yeah.
and how it is not as easy to always having to be on top of things,
Hmm.
always having to post stuff and always having to be creative and always, I think it, and then, I think about the years that I've been in it. I've been in it for well over 25 years.
Yeah.
And there's a point in time when we have to really think about burnout, like, but you got to be passionate. You got to love what you do. And obviously you're doing that. You're showing it. Not only are you don't look robotic, right? Some people get on a show and a
Yeah.
podcast and it's just like, oh, I got another podcast today. No, you're very enthralled in it. Like you do your research, you're doing the things that really matter, not just about the topics or the people that you've got in it, but also just the genuine aspect of you put time and effort and it shows into your podcastings.
Hmm.
So I guess it is like, where did that inspiration come from? Like, I know we talked a little bit about your younger years. You just are just one of those that's like, you either all the way in or you're not all. It's
Yeah.
either you're in or out. And I think that that's where those that dedication really shows in what you do and that effort that you put in it, right?
Yeah.
Where does that inspiration come from, Troy?
Um, I think that somewhat I use some of it's just the way I grew up, and I didn't have my parents didn't die, but they both had traumatic brain injuries in their mid 30s, and so they didn't really have a career. And, and we were kind of, so we didn't really have parents. And it's a whole long and sordid story. We were kind of all broken up and lived in different homes and things. So I have always just been interested in other people, I guess, and that helps me with when you don't have a mom and dad, whatever the circumstances. Yeah, my mom's still alive. I live with her, but she wasn't really my mom. She was there. She was kind of more like a sister, and I was the man of the house at a very young age. So I've asked a lot of questions of other people. I've learned about life from other people, and it was never really something I got from family. And I guess that's where it probably started early, where I was always just interested and not shy to ask questions of others, or using their successes to motivate me. And so now I'm very much interested in drawing that out of people because I know that the effect it had on me. So when you watch some of the episodes and you get guests to be transparent and they open up, in your case in point, Carla Stiles in episode 66, right? I think that was your number. um, Carla opens up and you learn about Carla, and hopefully that's impactful and meaningful to someone who needs that, who can say, oh, they can relate to Carla and her story. So I think some of it just comes from just growing up that way, where I was always looking to other people to motivate me to, I don't know, put things in perspective. Maybe my circumstance wasn't as bad as I really thought. But that's just, so I've always done that. And then I also was a hiring manager um, in a company. I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. So I've always just liked finding out about people, right? They have this resume they put on your desk, you read through it, and there's more to the story. And I always want to get to the more to the story. Who is this individual I'm really hiring? Is this someone that was just coached to put a bunch of words on the paper? And I would usually just set the resume aside and we would just have a conversation. And so for me, I just want to know true motive, especially when you have profit and loss responsibility for a $300 million program, and you can really upset the apple cart if you hire the wrong person or the wrong company, as far as like a subcontractor. Well, then those are skills I learned just kind of through survival, or to be successful was I need to approach the way I interview very differently, maybe than the traditional way, and really learn about this individual, right? What kind of stresses and worries are they bringing to the office? Are they taking time to bone up on their skill sets when they go home? How do they stay on top of their craft, if you will? So those are just things that all I think of all kind of intermixed in, and I just genuinely have interest in learning about people. Maybe I'm just a rare bird. I don't know really where that comes from, but I think back, just as far as I can remember, I just genuinely like to hear people's stories.
I mean, we all have a story, right? And
Yeah.
I think when I came and did your podcast, I was like, I was a little nervous about it because I was like, how much do I really tell people about my survivals?
Hmm.
I'm a kind of similar lifestyle of, my mother wasn't really around a whole lot. My father didn't come into
Yeah.
my pictures till I was in my 20s. So there was some part that you either learn to survive or you don't. And I think that depending on how you live, growing up, and I remember being one of those kids that went to school hungry because I
Mm,
didn't have money to go to school and eat. And
right.
so it was that moment where you're like, it's survive or die kind of aspect. And I just surrounded myself around people that had good interest for me too. And so I didn't have a family that said, okay, you need to go to college or you need to
Yeah.
inspire to be better. There was something in me that just said, I got to do this. And I don't know what it was, that little tiny voice. And it was probably like 1% of my voice that said, you don't need to do this. And it was just like one of those things, like back in those days, it was like you graduate from high school and you get married, right?
Yeah.
And you have kids. And it was just that was the routine. And I was like, I don't want to be that routine. I didn't want to
Hmm.
be that person. And yes, I mean, life doesn't hand you a box of chocolate and said, life's good, right?
Yeah.
It's an everyday dog system of like, you got to get up and you have to go, I'm going to do this. And there's some days where, you don't want to, right? You
Yeah.
have to fight that. I want to be lazy today and I want to watch Netflix, but that's that inner person of you going, I don't feel accomplished. And you're probably one of those people, Troy, that says,
Yeah.
I just don't feel fulfilled unless there's these goals. Do you write your goals down every day? Do you manifest your ideas? How do you come up with some of the ideas that you've got right now? Like, how do you do that?
I don't really write them down, but they're just ever present. I feel like I'm a failure, and I'm unsuccessful, and I have to remind myself, like, well, you have accomplished much, but it's just that chase. I think Matthew McConaughey talked about it once when he won like an Academy Award. He said he's chasing himself, right? 20 years, the Matthew McConaughey that's 20 years in the future, he's chasing
Yeah.
that guy. Um, and so I don't necessarily have to, certain things I don't ever have to write down because it's never going to leave my mind. I push and I push, and my sometimes my wife will be even like, well, what is it you're trying to achieve? I'm like, you just say, the best successes I've ever had in life is when I'm just head down and I'm working hard and I feel like I know what I need to do. I don't necessarily know what the outcome's going to be, but the outcome is always good. But it's just, once I commit to something and I feel like, okay, I think I've got a lot of these pieces in place now, just keep doing it and make improvements along the way, but just keep doing it. And at some point, there will be some success. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm chasing. And I get up every day. I don't sleep in because guilt will get over me, right? Like, don't sleep past 6. Don't sleep past 6:30. You need to get going. You need to go. Just like, yeah, even today, I can't sleep in because my mind just doesn't stop. And it's just, I don't know if that's just single income home I'm working kind of, I have a career and I have this side hustle thing that I would love to turn into a career, right? Be one of the lucky ones, but those things drive me. And I have 4 kids and 3 now in college. Like I don't rest.
I think that we're very similar in mindset. I think it's just like, it's one of those things where there's this drive inside us. We don't really know what the answer is. Like, I have
Yeah.
people ask me, like, when I started my business and I had babies, I had twins at home and a little girl, and it was not normal to be in a home with an office
Mm,
and a woman in business at that time because it was so new. Now it's like it's normal, but
yeah.
back then it was not heard of, and so you had to fight through the negativity. You had to fight through this. There's a reason why I'm doing this. And you have to fight every single day. You wake up every day and you have to
Hmm.
have the determination of like, I can do this. Whether you feel in your side, like there's moments where you go, maybe I'm not cut out to do this. Maybe there's some self-doubt. Maybe I
Hmm.
question who I am. Maybe I question why I'm putting so much effort in it because you don't know what the goals are. You just know that this is just something that you should be doing. You don't know why. You don't have the answers to it. And I
Yeah.
think that that's something that you have to just continue on that path, no matter what everybody else thinks, right? Because you always got people that's going to have an opinion about you. There's
Hmm.
always going to be someone that's going to have to interject some kind of aspect of something inside you that goes, makes you question that. But Seth Godin made a comment one time. He's got a quote out there, and he has this quote. He says, you have to just get over the failure, right? You have to get over the failure. You have to fail. And what you do is you get back up and you continue on and meet those goals and you continue to fight it. And you
Yeah.
fight those goals and you fight that failure because you're going to fail. There's times when things are going to fall apart. And you and I know that, right? But we are just built differently than certain people, right? We're built to succeed no matter not what matters at what cost. We just know that there's something in our life that we don't want to leave undone. And the thing is that success is depending on what you think is, not success of money,
Yeah.
materials, things like that. Success is just knowing the fact that you left a mark that maybe somebody will remember you one day when everything's gone, right? When
Yeah.
that day that you'll close that podcast down and go, this is my last episode, that somebody will go, wow, he did something for the community. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like being
Yeah.
part of this community, being part of that, you've leaving something behind, because
Yeah.
we're
I
not
think
guaranteed tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I think I do. And if I could, so like 10 years ago, well actually it's been less than 10 years, but I kind of closed the computer on. I used to do live streaming for the local high school. And actually I grew to where I was doing the local high school and the crosstown rival. So, right now my youngest boy goes to James Clemens, so it'd be the equivalent of me starting with Clemens and then picking up Bob Jones, crosstown rival, right? Or pick whatever school, Huntsville, Grissom, Buckhorn, Sparkman, I don't the rivalries. And so, but what was extremely satisfying, and it was hard, it was really hard. This was before we have cloud infrastructure, and that's what makes Facebook Live and Riverside, what we're using here, work. Those things didn't exist, and it was not a commodity like it is now. It was extremely difficult to guarantee a viewer that nothing was going to happen. It was going to be uninterrupted. Like every football game I did, for the most part, the internet would go out, or the servers on the side of the company we were using would go down. Something would happen where it was frustrating. Anyway, having said that, and all the effort we would put into doing a live game, there were times when we go to a playoff game, you were 200 miles away, and the families of these athletes, these high school athletes, are getting to watch it, right? Whether that was back home in the hometown, or this one person was on a naval carrier in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and he got to watch his son play football, right? Those are the things that just gave me so much joy. It was my idea. I built the whole thing, and now I'm having an impact on hundreds of players and families who don't have to miss out on the opportunity to watch their son or their grandson or even the cheerleaders. And so that was something that was instilled in me very early through this type of work, and now on the podcasting side of just making a difference. And so that does sometimes that's worth more than any sort of payment, right? It's just making people feel good and giving them, providing a service to them that not a lot of people could do, right? And then when you're the one who steps up and provides that service, I mean, it's hard to explain how that makes you feel.
Well, I think there's fulfillment in every single person, right? And I think there's an aspect of like when you first came here, um, moved here, and you established yourself. How did you get so involved? Like, because I think you're a master at networking. Like, you're just like it just took off, and I saw you on LinkedIn. That's how I saw your
Hmm.
postings, and that's how I got to know you, and that's how we communicated was through LinkedIn, which is probably one of the best platforms out there when it comes
Yeah.
to business. And that's how we ended up meeting was through LinkedIn from one of your recordings. So I just would like to know, how did you master the networking aspect? Like, how did you get, because it's if you have to be here for years, I mean, I'm just saying this, you have to be here for years in Huntsville to infiltrate the very circles that you're getting into now. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying
Yeah.
that you do it in such a very quick way that it's really, and you're not a quitter. Like, you just continue to keep getting through and getting through. And I think that the more that you're producing, so how did you get through these circles so quick, Troy? How did you connect that networking aspect?
Well, I mean, I guess some of it's just my personality. Maybe I'm easy to talk to or something. It all started with I went to a Trash Pandas business mixer in January of 2022. I had been on the job 2 weeks
Hmm.
with Mantech, my company. I hadn't even started the podcast yet, but I went to this business mixer, and a lot of times it's okay, I want to have a relationship with the Trash Pandas or the Huntsville City Football Club. Okay, what can I do? What is it they need from me? They need, they need revenue from sponsorships and ads. Okay, well, let me sponsor a game. So I sponsor a game, and with that, we had to create a video. So then I hired a small business in the community to create a video for us that we would use in this game sponsorship. Um, those were some of my first guests on my when I started the podcast. Then I had those people on, so then we could kind of further promote what we were doing. So promotions usually is somewhat simple, where even designed by Carla, you come on to my program, and allows an opportunity for my audience to grow, but at the same time, it's good for you, right? It's good for your advertising. So to some degree, every guest you have on is just with that. What can I do to help this individual, this organization they represent, to further promote themselves?
Yeah.
And a lot of times you will see them go on the podcast circuit, if you will, and they won't be just on my show, but on other shows, hoping to cast that net wide to promote an upcoming event or just the existence of this thing. So
Yeah.
part of it is realize right away it's not about me. And I learned that from when I was in live streaming. Nobody knows me. I'm not a celebrity like Joe Rogan or somebody who was already famous and started a podcast. I'm a nobody. So I have to check my humility at the door, my pride at the door, and the best way to grow is to put it all into the guest. It's all about the guest. It's about North Alabama, and you're going to learn about me along the way. And purposefully, in an episode, I will drop stories and experiences, and you'll learn about me. And I'm starting to get to a point now where I feel like, okay, now I've done enough episodes. Maybe I start marketing myself. I've changed it to Our Town with Troy By. Now you're going to see a little bit more because I'm getting a little bit more confident in that people know who I am. But at the beginning, it's not about me. And so that's helped a lot. It's just, so everything I do is, how do I take this person, this individual, not only get them on the show, but show that this podcast would be a great forum for them to promote, right?
Yeah.
And there's a few businesses in town that do that. There's a lot of people who are really good at the promotion side or helping. At It's a new generation of advertising, right? Or new form of advertising that we do with social media. And I think anyone's going to gravitate to you if they feel like you are going to be a good platform for them, right? There's
Yeah.
always selfish motivations in those types of things. I don't know if that really answers your question, but um, that's just kind of the way you do business and market development.
Yeah. And I
There
think
has
that
to be something both sides.
I think that if you know the secret sauce of just getting the right people in your community or in your circle, it just helps filter out who do you need to connect with? And I
Yeah.
think that in some ways or another, I think I'm very similar to that. I think I understand where you're coming from, because when I do my podcasting, it's really getting to know that person behind the scenes, really knowing their story of like the struggles. We all struggle,
Hmm.
that we're human, that we're real, and that it's okay to fall apart, and then it's okay to get back on. It's like climbing that hill. You're going to fall down it and you're going to go back up it. But there's lessons to be learned in all that we do. And I think
Yeah.
that that's so important that we do that together. You know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
with the connections that you're making, it's like there's some similar stories you probably are hearing. You know what I mean? The pathways. We all want something in our own lives that is fulfilling. And
Yeah.
I think that with podcasting, because I do remember when some of my early podcastings were not video,
Yeah.
because a lot of people were just really scared to get in front of a camera because they act a certain way when the camera came on. They were like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed
Yeah.
to say. But when the camera was off, they were more relaxed. They were able to tell their story. And I actually got more emotion when I didn't have the camera on. And so I did that for a long time. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to just do this my way, where people can see their faces and expressions. And I think that people are getting much more comfortable in the fact they've got a camera in their face. But I
Yeah.
think it's just been a building block of like, oh my gosh, getting them in front of that camera. And I think that you're doing that so well. Your setup in your studio is incredible. It's
Hmm.
like there's cameras in every corner, and so I was just in awe, of your studio, the way you approached it, the way you made people feel comfortable, the information that you provided. You almost like you did so much research, and you actually surprised me on a couple things, especially when you brought up my information about my father and my grandmother. Was just enlightening, because it's just things that I don't think about,
Yeah.
and then when you brought it up, it was just so warming to know that I had such an inspiration that was in front of me that I didn't even know at the time. And so every time somebody brings something like that up, like you did, it made me appreciate the time that I did get to spend with him was so impressionable for me.
Yeah. And
Um,
I appreciate you saying that. And just so, like, my style is I'll do the research, but I'm only going to use that the if I feel like I've built a rapport with the guest,
yeah,
that I feel like I can introduce that. There's times I back off. There's times where my emotional intelligence sensors are going off and like, don't go there with that or at all or yet. Um, and then I just figure out when to kind of insert that, because I do see the value, right? And that's a lot of people will say, I don't know what's interesting about me. And then we end up talking for 2 hours because everybody has something interesting. And so, but that is never, I never give my guests questions in advance, because and I've told, like I told you, it's categorical. I feel like we're going to move through these things, but there might be parts of the conversation which lead us down a different path, or I might tackle a particular topic later if we get to it, type thing. So it's just trying to know when is the right time to bring things up, like, oh, by the way, I found an obituary on your father and let's talk about
yeah, yeah. I think that your timing was so good. It was just like it was, and so I think I mentioned this to you before. I was like, when you did that podcast with me, I think that was the sickest week I've had in a while.
it.
And so I actually lost my voice, and then I had an event that I was supposed to be at on Friday. And then I was immediately after that event, I came right to your studio.
Yeah.
And I can remember, like, in the middle of my presentation, I was like, in the beginning of it, I was like, I almost wasn't waking up at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm so, and I had lost my voice, and I was really struggling. And so I was like, I didn't want to cancel on you because I knew that this was something I really wanted to do with you. And it was such a great experience for me, because it was a part of my life that I wanted to let people know about, that struggle is real, and whatever life gives you, you just throw it right back at them. And I
Yeah.
think in some ways now that we shared some very interesting information about each other, and you're just a really great person to be around. And I think that even when I see you out in public, you're always got a smile on your face, or, and you're so warm and welcoming. So I think that people really need to understand how you're just a person that just loves what you do. You can sense it, you can feel it, you have such passion in what you do. You put so much time into it. And so, Troy, I really want to say, keep doing what you do for this community. Keep doing what you provide for people, which is a way for people to be an outlet in your podcastings. I can really see you've been working on your YouTube subscribers
Yeah,
since the last time I talked to you.
it exploded in the last 3 weeks.
Well, not just exploded, it just it steamrolled. So there's some secrets that I think I need to find out about you. But I love what you're doing, and I think I appreciate your time and coming on to the podcast today. And I hope that we can do another one pretty soon.
Yeah. Let
I
me just leave
really,
this one last thing. I had never done lighting in like a studio setup like the way I've done it, right? But I felt like this is the number one thing for anyone podcasting. Your audio, number one. That's the first thing you need to address, audio, and then content. So if you go back and look at my first 23 episodes, I'm not proud. They look awful. But I was learning, and I wasn't afraid to approach the video side and the lighting studio side because I knew my audio would be good, and I knew the lighting, or not the lighting, the content would be good. I'm very proud of all of those conversations. But you also have to be willing to learn, right?
yeah,
And hope I think your audience and your viewers can
yeah,
tolerate that, and it's just incremental improvements. And then I hit episode 24 and I got a new key light, and then I hit episode 38 and now I shoot it differently. So you just, but again, there's certain principles you can't go away from. And I think number one is when you have a guest, the content has to be good. They're never going to come back, and they're not going to refer you to anybody. So
yeah.
you have to nail those things before you start diving into studio lighting and multiple cameras and things like
Well,
that.
okay, so this is your podcast. Would you come back?
Of course.
Grade me from am I A plus, B plus?
You're an A minus. I never give pluses right away, Carla.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I got you. Okay, I got
No,
you.
I appreciate I appreciate the opportunity. I really
Yeah.
do.
And when we talk about lessons too, and I'll close on this, you and I did a previous recording, right? And we all have hiccups, right?
Yeah.
And I go in to look at the recording, and somehow on your side of the recording had not taken. And so
Yeah.
we're here again, doing this recording again, which is, I think, is much more relaxed than it was the first time. And so the second time around, sometimes it's just even better. So
Yeah. True
thank you
that.
today, Troy, for coming on the Coffee and Hustle, joining me, the man behind the podcast for Our Town Podcast. It is such a pleasure having you on here. And I hope to see you again soon, Troy. So thank
Oh,
you so
you
much for
will.
coming on.
Thank you,
Okay.
Carla.
Thank you so much.